Hi guys, welcome back. We are working once again on a 2004 XC90, and as you can see from the fact that this has scrubbed out the tyre right the way down to the canvas on the side, and it's got bearing grease flicking from the centre all the way out. These white lines are a dead giveaway, radially running out. Now need to change a bearing. So on these it's a super easy job to do, assuming that the thing hasn't seized. So I'm going to get it up on stands and let's crack on. Now, any regulars to the channel will probably remember last year when my serpentine belt let go. I'll just link to that video in case you're interested. But this is yet another job where all I have to work with is, ironically, because I hadn't cleared my car out, an impact driver, my emergency kit, little mini trolley jack and a jack stand. That's it. That's all I've got to play with. So no fancy workshop tools. In brief, what we have to do here is we need to remove that 10mm bolt, that 14mm bolt that holds the end of the drive shaft in. I need to remove that bolt and that bolt there, which will allow the hub carrier to fall over. Of course, before I can do that I need to take the disc off, and before I can do that I need to remove the caliper. And there are two 15mm caliper bolts there and directly below it. And there are two other things I forgot to mention, one of which is the nut off the top of the track rod end. There's a ball joint in there, and the other one is that, which is the ABS sensor. So I'm going to crack on here. We'll get this done in as close to real time as we can, and hopefully should be a fairly straightforward job. 18mm for the track rod end. Now with these, should you need to, you might need an adjustable or something to hold on to that and run it off with a ring spanner. The alternative is to put a bit of pressure upwards on there, and that should be enough to actually spin it off without needing to secure the centre. So if either you've got one with a hex end that's chewed out or whatever, or if, as in this case, it's for me, I don't actually have an adjustable, you can pull upwards like this, and remember, drive it on, drive it off. Oh. There we go. Now we'll just pop this out of the way. Okay, that's one thing done. Next up, I'm going to go for the two 15mm bolts on the back of the caliper carrier. So these ones are here and here. Note the thread locker, that's going to have to go back on afterwards. It's very important never to put tension on the brake hose itself. So I'm not going to hang this on the hose. I'm going to remove the caliper, just compress it gently by hand. I do give it a bit of violence. That should lift off, and then we can hang that up there out of the way. Alright, so next up we've got the 15mm in the centre here. Sorry, I said 15 for the caliper carrier brackets before, they're 18s. This is the 15. And it shouldn't be on massively tight. That's it. So that goes into the end of the drive shaft. So once this is done, I'll be able to push the drive shaft back through And then with this released, the whole thing will lean over. Now, as so many times before, I'm a guest here on someone's drive doing this job, so I'll catch all of the greasy bits, make sure I'm not leaving a big old mess. 10mm just for the little bolt that holds the rotor in place during assembly. This feels like it's going to shear, that would be bad news. So I'm going to give that a little squirt of penetrating oil. And of course, regardless of the penetrating oil, it did shear, but that's not a showstopper, because this is the piece that's getting replaced, this bearing piece here. So it doesn't matter that that little bolt is stuck in the hole. I'm not going to have to drill and retap as I have done before, or try and back that piece out. I've got a new screw and a new bearing coming anyway, so that's okay. Right, so next up, just using an extension bar here, I'm just going to push the end of the drive shaft back through. 21 for the nut, 19 for the bolt in this case. I'm going to use a breaker bar on this. And I've just got the ratchet there resting against the flange that the carrier goes onto for the caliper. So hopefully it's all living on a wing and a prayer here, because I've got very little to get me out of trouble if this goes wrong. We'll see. And the same on the bottom. Just going to use an extension bar with this one. So make sure when you do this that the head of the bolt is very firmly seated, so you're not rounding it off. Super important, and this is where it's useful actually to have the bracing held with one hand, so that you can stabilise this and keep it straight and then really lean onto it. Very, very important to make sure that doesn't get stripped off. There we go. Okay, this will just take me a minute. Alright, so a few more little bits and bobs, and then we can pop that out and roll the whole thing over. So next up, and one of the last things actually, is the ABS planter, which is, I think, an 8mm, might be 10mm, but I need to go to a 3/8 socket for this one, because I haven't got anything that small in my 1/2 inch drive. So let's give it a go. No great force involved in this, so I can use a little stubby ratchet. And the trick with these is, if the sensor itself is stuck, then just press it from either side gently with a flat bladed screwdriver, and it should come out. Now this one's quite a fresh sensor, so I'm hopeful it won't present too much resistance. But even so, it might need a little gentle persuasion. So all you do is basically stick the screwdriver end from the sides and gently twist it. Just get a little bit of leverage in there, you don't need to go crazy with them. Or if you're flexing and you've got a pair of long-nosed angled pliers, it is a hell of a lot easier get them out with that. Not grooved on the end, happy days. So we'll just roll that out of its grommet here just to keep it nice and safe while I'm doing the rest of the job. Pop that out and back out of the way. Okay, moment of truth. Now, it's been a long time since I've done one of these, and if I'm honest, I wasn't really wanting to do one this weekend. I'll see how it goes. Pop that out of there. I'm not going to remove the bottom one, I'm going to leave that in as a pivot, a fulcrum I should say. Okay, so with that popped forwards, you'll now see that we can pull the drive shaft out, drop that down there, and on the back here, and this is the magic with these things really, you can see the bolts that hold the thing in place. So we've got, if I can find the angle for you, backhand, one here, one here, one here, and one here. Now, I often joke that everything's better with lube, but in this case, never a truer word spoken in jest. These bolts here go through the hub carrier, and that's fine. But on the other side, similarly covered in corrosion, is this. That's the bit that needs to come out, so it needs to separate along that join there. That there is the threaded end of the bolt that holds it in place. So what I need to do is blast it with penetrating oil, and this is all I've got, so it'll do, it's okay. Maybe a bit of heat as well. So I'm going to spend probably half an hour basting this in the hopes that I can release those bolts from the back and then apply enough physical violence with a small lump hammer to actually persuade this that it might like to fall off. I may end up having to replace the hub carrier, in which case we just need to transfer this dust shield across, bolt a new one on really. Obviously the bottom ball joint would need to be moved across as well, but I'm hoping to avoid that. Anyway, I've got some it's actually wallpaper, lining paper, very absorbent, down on the deck there, because this is a borrowed drive, as so often is the case on these disastrous failed road trips where this old car lets me down. But yeah, next up we're basically just going to squirt lots and lots of penetrating oil into the various different bits of this to try and encourage it to separate. Just soak it all the way around, lots and lots and lots, but don't leave a mess on the friendly drive that you are using to get yourself out of trouble, or the side of the road. Obviously we don't want to pollute the environment either. I'm going to blast a bit of this in from behind as well. We'll see how that does. Hopefully I won't need to get a blowtorch on it as well, because I haven't got one of those. I've been going to buy one, so I'm going to try and do this without. Now this is one of those moments where a lot of guys on YouTube try and make this look super easy. It isn't super easy, but you can do some things here that are going to make your life a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do, you'll notice I've stuck the ball joint on the track rod end on. That's just loosely attached. I'm going to pin this at the top. I've got the end of the drive shaft out of the splined socket here and over to the right. I'm going to have to let this down and push it over to the left for the two on the right hand side. But basically what that allows me to do is get at these two bolts here, which are now nicely soaked in oil. That's those two down there. There we go. Worth noting that if you, of course, you are fighting against red thread locker, never forget to put the thread locker back on. You do not want these things going loose on you. Now at that point I'm actually making contact with the lower control arm, so I'm just going to switch over to the slightly smaller ratchet. Now because we're using the end of the track rod arm here as the brace, we can turn the steering all the way to the right hand side if you're working on the left hand side if you're working on the right, to actually kink the back end out. And that's super useful because whilst we can pull easily enough on the bolts on that side to get them loose, these ones you'd be pushing down, and short of bracing your shoulder under the wheel arch, which works, this is a much easier option, just using a long breaker bar, just like that. And of course once it's broken we can go back to the normal ratchet. And what would be nice is with that out, if the thing just fell off, I don't think it's gonna. So here's what the knuckle looks like when it's out of the car. That's the bit, of course, that attaches to the suspension leg. This bit here attaches onto the track rod arm. You've got the bottom ball joint at the bottom. Nice to have a good look at it. And of course that's where the 4 bolts go through for the bearing. Now you can, if you have got a fairly fresh one of these, sometimes beat them out from the back with a hammer. Lots of heat, lots of penetrating oil. My advice to you is don't even bother trying if it's more than a few years old, because they will be absolutely welded solid. So I needed a new tyre anyway, and at the local tyre place they have a pneumatic press, or hydraulic press rather, and they were able to just push this out in a few seconds. So don't waste your time, just get it pushed out by guys with the Pro Tools. They didn't even charge me for it. So, you know, it's super easy if you ask the question, and a really tricky job if you don't have the right gear. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a wire brush around, clean up the inside. The new one simply goes back into that location and bolts in from the back. In the kit you get replacement bolts. Those replacement bolts pull everything tight, and then it just goes back on. The 2 bolts for the suspension leg, of course the connector there for the ball joint at the end of the track rod arm. Bottom ball joint goes through the end of the control arm, and you are then just left with the 2 holes for the carrier caliper, for the caliper carrier rather, for the brake, and that's it. So I am racing against the rain here on the road, and I'm not going to waste your time by showing you the reassembly journey, because it is such a simple job, there really is no point. Not the cheapest job. Replacement bearing was about 80 quid, but let me tell you that the replacement of these, you can't get them aftermarket, which means that you're stuck with an OEM dealership part, and in the UK at the moment that's £650, which is fairly extortionate. The eBay car breakers are working at around 200 to 250 quid. So again, if you can get your existing one reconditioned, happy days, go for it. Right, I'm going to call it there. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Take it easy, and I will see you next time. Cheers.